Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another Planet Coaster video in Lunarworld. So today I'm finally attempting to fully embark and make some decent progress on this free fly coaster that's been sitting in the back of my park for a while. I've been struggling to come up with a cohesive theme for the ride, so that's why I've been putting it off. But I think I finally have something together that would seem pretty cool and make sense with the overall wacky lore of the Discovery Mountain area. And I'll get into more of the lore as the video goes on. The ride uses the real-life coaster type called the Free Fly, manufactured by SNS, which is a pretty rare family coaster type, as there's only one in the world at the moment. Though it's a very strange coaster type, I feel it's been underutilized and can actually offer some pretty unique ride experiences. So I decided to try to combine it with an indoor setting and heavy theming as an experiment of sorts, so we'll see how it goes. The layout's very bare bones at the moment, the main goal today is to start theming the station and hopefully complete the indoor roller coaster section and finally close off this area. So without further ado, I think it's time to move into the time lapse. Alright, so in the time lapse, the first thing we're going to be working on is the station area. And the station area is going to be themed to more of a Romanesque style entryway. And the theming of the entrance is actually going to be a museum, and I'm actually going to start talking about the lore a little bit here. So the museum is owned by this guy. His name is Professor Chadwick. Came up with this like random name, and I think it makes somewhat sense. But anyways, this guy, so he made a lot of money, and he harnessed the power to basically take the energy from the volcano, and I've named it Mount Helios. So this volcano that we actually detailed in the last episode, or a couple episodes ago, he was able to use the geothermal energy from the volcano and convert it to energy, and it actually powers a lot of Lunarworld, and I don't know, he sells all of his power, and you know, from that he's made a lot of money. So with that money that he's made, he built this massive castle, and it's the Glass Castle, and that's actually what this ride is going to be called, like an adventure through the Glass Palace or Glass Castle or something like that. But yeah, so he built this palace, and he filled it with all these artifacts that he gathered from traveling around the world, and his travels, revealed a lot of like interesting things. He actually also saw a lot of exotic animals, and these exotic animals are going to be showcased in his greenhouse, which is the second portion of this ride, which we'll get to a little bit later. But here, yeah, this is going to be the museum. The museum is, I think it was a good setting for the entrance, so people, while they're waiting in line, kind of behind where the camera is pointing right now, there's gonna be a lot of like artifacts and glass cases and things like that, so people can sort of do something or look at some interesting stuff while they're waiting in line. I kind of imagine this is more of a big ticket attraction, e-ticket attraction, I think it's called, in the park. So it's gonna be more of a longer line, so I wanted to give people something to do. But anyways, I guess to kind of tailor along with the theme of the ride, the professor is super fascinated by all of the things that he's discovered around the world, and he wants to showcase it to a lot of different people. So he decided to make something like fly tours, they're called, which tours a lot of different things. He built these invented these interesting carriages to offer a unique sort of flying experience, which is the carriages that you sit in. But he wants to showcase like basically his museum, which is what you enter it through. The greenhouse, which is what we're going to get to in a bit, which is the area where there's a lot of exotic animals and exotic plants, and it's very magical and like flowerful and things like that. So when we get there, I'll go into more detail. And then finally, he wants to show you his invention of how he harnessed the power of the volcano, and that's how he made all of his money. His invention of like the geothermal energy aspects of his career. So yeah, so that's basically the premise of the ride. And then from there, you actually kind of fly around at the entrance of the ride. You fly around Mount Helios, and That'll be the third portion. He likes the aspect of flying as well, so I'm trying to tie everything in here together. It actually took a while for me to sort of think of some way to tie everything together. I think once I'm done with this park, I might add some more like concrete descriptions of all of the rides and the lore around them, but essentially that's kind of the baseline of what I have here. So this was all kind of inspired off of a multitude of places, actually. First thing that came to mind was like Indiana Jones. Like, he's sort of an adventurer, and he's not a collector in a sense, but this sort of idea of adventure, like in the 1930s or like the late 1800s, is what I wanted to sort of encapsulate here, and that's why it fits with the sort of theming as well. So it's actually another thing is called Disney Sea did a sort of similar concept where they had like these inventors and explorers. No, they were explorers, and then I think some of them were inventors too, but they're called the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. That's what they're called. And a lot of the rides that Disney Sea has the lore around it is actually based on these people. There's a couple of different characters, I think. So I feel like it fit kind of interesting with what Discovery Mountain is supposed to be. Which is like an adventurous sort of inventing, like age of discovery type of area of the park. So I feel like it fit pretty well, and it's it's a unique ride type. I don't know like if it really makes sense in the grand scheme of things, but I think it works. I think it's unique, it's quirky. I think I wanted to build like a really cool, interesting themed park, and I think that's something that like Disney or some other park would try and emulate somehow. So I think it works. So finally, I'm moving on to the indoor roller coaster part of this ride, which is the greenhouse. And the greenhouse, I imagined basically Professor Chadwick, what he did was he traveled with all the money he made from the geothermal energy by harnessing the volcano. He traveled around the world, like I said earlier, and he brought back a bunch of animals, and the animals and the plants, and he wanted to sort of showcase them in his greenhouse here. So, that's essentially what's in the greenhouse. It's going to be a lot of different animals from like the adventure pack, and a lot of different, plants from different themed items. I wanted to make this more... It's like I wanted to make it sort of a supernatural, magical feeling. So it's not exactly realistic, I would say. Like, I don't think you would see these animals in real life, but it's more fantastical. It's not exactly like supposed to be reality. It's a theme park for heaven's sake. So I think it makes sense, and I think it works. But I guess the aesthetic I was going for was like Pandora Avatar. Like all of the different colored lights, and this ride is going to be experienced at nighttime too, so it's going to have a lot of different colors, like blues and greens and purples and all kinds of different things. And as you're flying through the greenhouse, you're going to be kind of encountering a lot of different animals. So for example, right here I'm doing a little hippo scene where the hippos just kind of jump out at you, and a bunch of lights flash or whatever. And it's very, the ride's kind of basic in theme in like the scenes that I have. I didn't want to go like into a crazy amount of detail of like detailing the scenes to a fine print, because I wanted to just get the overall idea of the ride. I have other things to do here, so not so much detail, but enough detail to where I think it looks cool. Plus, you're kind of flying around, and you don't see things a lot of fast, so I kind of just put everything together, and I think it works decently well. So here I'm building sort of like a branch tunnel with a bunch of roots. It actually transitions to the geothermal plant. You kind of saw the sign there, but that's where like Professor Chadwick does all of his harnessing of the geothermal energy or whatever. So I'm going to leave that scene for when the POV gets released, when I'm done with this park. So you won't see it now, but you'll see it eventually. Adding a little, like some snakes that pop out here. And just to kind of get a glimpse of what I want this to look like. This is what it looks like at night, roughly. I'm adding some lights around these snakes as they pop out, but it's going to be a lot of like blues and greens and you know, very like fantastical colors like I mentioned before. And finally, the last scene of this area is going to be this little swamp section. So I have some alligators that are going to pop out at you, and as well there's going to be some like ancient artifacts. This is, you know, I'm going to have some vines kind of creeping in, which you'll see being built in a little bit. But it's more of like the back section of this area, and the area is kind of you know, this whole thing is like weaving in and around trees, and I think the idea is like that's why I have like 2 alligators at different elevations, because the interesting thing about this ride is and one of the reasons why I wanted to do the sort of free fly coaster is because it can offer like 2 different ride experiences. So here, for example, like at a higher elevation, you're going to get the alligator that's a little bit higher, but at a lower elevation, you're probably going to see these little tiki heads that I built. And it, you know, you're kind of being raised and lowered, and so the person can ride the ride twice and kind of get a different experience each time. And it offers a lot of like interesting elevation differentials. So I basically tried to like build like roughly different-ish scenes between the different elevations. Like I built 2 animals, like 2 hippos and 2 alligators or whatever, and 2 snakes, but I think it offers like kind of a cool experience. So one of the reasons why I wanted to build it. And finally, we are going to build the actual greenhouse sort of ceiling around the ride. So I had a very obscure structure. I was going for like a greenhouse dome, but I didn't really see how a dome could work here, and making a dome in Planet Coaster is really hard. So I decided to just build some archways, and then I added some glass panels behind it, and then some little like detail, or I could think they're called like wall fences or something like that. These little details, and then I drew some like glass panes. And then behind it, I drew some, or not drew, sorry, I'm not drawing things here. I built some space walls. And the idea is you're going to enter this portion of the indoor section of the ride. You're going to enter it during nighttime. So during nighttime, I wanted basically I wanted to feel like a glass, you know, a glass greenhouse, but behind the walls are going to be like stars. So that's why I built these space walls that you can get off of like the sci-fi filter or like the sci-fi pieces in Planet Coaster. So it actually made a really cool effect. I'm pretty proud of myself for coming up with it. And especially at nighttime, like I'm going to have some B-roll footage later on. We're going to see everything happening at night. And it looks pretty neat. So I'm pretty proud of that sort of concept. But just kind of moving on here, I'm building some like dome structures, like I said, and this is going to be the top of the greenhouse. And this part was kind of tough because my building is not very square, so I had to be really creative with how we're going to arch everything and whatnot. So and for the roof, it's very simple. It's just going to be some glass panels and then some basically support structures going in between. I went on Google and I kind of looked at some reference pictures of some greenhouse sort of roofs and whatnot, and they're all sort of domed and glass in some way. So I just kind of tried to encapsulate. I've been using that word a lot. Encapsulate. I just tried to emulate that, like what I saw in those pictures, and do the best I can. This is really difficult actually, because making panels, the glass panels that you receive in Planet Coaster are extremely, they're very square. There's no circular ones. So whenever I had to make some sort of like domed glass structure, I've done it a couple times in Lunarworld so far, in other parts of the park, but it's really difficult. So I kind of had a hard time doing that. But somehow I made it through, and I spent a lot of hours putting this together. But finally, we are done with the panels and all this indoor section. So I'm just closing it off with some of those space panels like I talked about earlier. But yeah, so I'm just going to close this off real quick. Thank you all for watching. I really enjoy all the feedback I'm getting on some of the other videos. But yeah, hope to see you soon, and I'll enjoy some B-roll.